Oh, I'm glad you've joined us. Welcome to Masterpiece Theatre. Today we will be bestowing knowledge upon your minuscule brains by teaching you poetic forms and structures. And so without further ado, the limerick. Do you want some, kitty? I think you do.
Ah yes, the Limerick, a wonderful poem of 5 lines which is often joined with a humorous twist. Here's one that you may know.
Here's one you might know. There once was a man from Peru who dreamed he was eating his shoe. He awoke with a fright in the middle of the night to find that his dream had come true.
Ah, gee, Gary, you sure are smart.
Now what makes a limerick so special is that the first, second, and fifth lines rhyme, and the third and fourth lines also rhyme. How joyous!
A romantic poem is usually a poem with no specific structure about love, obviously. It can also be about heartbreak, dreams, and in this case, admiration. Now here is a reenactment of the poem To Helen of Troy by Edgar Allan Poe.
Helen, thy beauty is to me like those Nicene barks of yore, that gently over perfumed sea the weary way-worn wanderer bore to his own native shore. On desperate seas long wont to roam, the hyacinth hair, thy classic face, thy naiad airs have brought me home to the glory that was Greece and the grandeur that was Rome. Lo, in yon brilliant window niche, how statue-like I see thee stand, the agate lamp within thy hand, a sight from the regions which are Holy Land.
A ballad is a poem that tells a story in a musical way. Here's a little clip to show you how.
1, 2, 3. It's the circle of life. And it moves us all. It's the circle.
So, you get the point. It can be a poem about life, love, death, and a whole bunch of other topics. In The Circle of Life, the ballad is about the entire life circle, from birth to death. And it also includes the ups and downs that life brings us.
Ah, the sonnet. Any subject can be tackled in a sonnet, but what makes this type of poem unique is that they are all 14-line lyric poems that express a single thought in iambic pentameter. Here is one by Shakespeare.
My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips is red. If snow be white, why, then her breasts are done. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. And I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. And I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare.
And now, on to something a bit more cultured. The metaphysical poem often is created with complex thought and philosophy. In this poem by Andrew Marvell, the poet shows just how complex his thoughts could be. In the first stanza, we find the poet trying to, in the lightest of terms, woo a lady. However, he hath no swag. So in the second stanza, he tackles the topic of the relative shortness of lives, and then, in the third stanza, goes back to wooing her, yet mixes his intellectual and devious thoughts. Metaphysical poetry can be pretty odd.
Lyric poems allow poets to express their thoughts and emotions in whichever way they please. They may be mystical, mournful, joyful, or even so seductive. The above lyric poem, Sweet Chop by 50 Pence, directly expresses the poet's thoughts about lust.
I will take it down tonight, sweet shop. I will go it down to the lollipop. Go it, Gwen, don't you stop. Continue until I feel its glee.
An ode is a type of lyric poem. It is celebratory and relates to something the poet strongly cares about in any tone they see fit. Usually, an ode will have some sort of rhyme, typically the ABAB CDCDE scheme. My bed was soft and cozy. My dreams were peaceful and deep, until my brute of a sister cruelly woke me up from my sleep. She did not understand, it seemed, the pleasantries of slumber. That much to me was obvious, when through my room she'd lumber, at such an early hour, that the sun was not awake, to rouse me from blissful oblivion, and my blankets from me take. It's said that early birds get the worm, but of good food that sounds wasteful. I'd much rather stay abed than catch a bug distasteful.
Not all poems are in celebration of something. The elegy is a poem of mourning and sadness, which is usually about loss.
It is over and nobody knows you. There is starlight drifting on the black water. There are stones in the sea and no one has seen. There is a shore and people are waiting and nothing comes back because it is over, because there's silence instead of a name. Why, Goldie? Why?
This is an example of a poem containing couplets. A couplet is a poem composed of 2 rhymed lines that are usually in the same meter. However, there are poems that are just containing 2 lines.
As you can see, lines 1 and 2 rhyme. That is our first couplet. Lines 3 and 4 rhyme, our second couplet. And finally, lines 5 and 6 rhyme, our third couplet.
Elizabeth, what's your teacup filled with?
Knowledge.
The Villanelle is a great example of a highly structured poem. It is composed of 19 lines. These 19 lines are made up of 5 tercets, or 3-line stanzas, and 1 quatrain, or 4-line stanza. Throughout its entirety, there are 2 repeating end-rhymes and 2 refrains. These 2 refrains are the first and third line of the first stanza and are repeated alternatively throughout the poem. These refrains also serve as the final 2 lines of the poem. Whoever created this style of poetry had way too much time on their hands.
There is one last poetic form, the narrative poem, which is quite simple to understand. It's what I've been talking in the entire time. The narrative poem tells a story and can contain lyrical or descriptive passages. How quaint! And thus concludes our tutorial on poetic forms and structures. We're very glad that you've joined us today and hope that you've gained a magnitude of knowledge. Godspeed.